Number 10. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Kentucky. In the early 20th century, the Waverly Hills Sanatorium was created in Louisville, Kentucky in order to treat patients suffering from tuberculosis. These days, it's considered one of the most haunted places in the United States. Over the course of its life, the building saw around 63,000 people die within its walls, many of those being attributed not to illness, but instead mistreatment and cruel experiments. People who visit say that they can see people's shadows on the walls and hear screams, despite no one else being there. It's also apparently very common to walk into cold spots, which are a well-known sign of ghosts and spirits being around. One of the most haunted parts of this building are the tunnels that are underneath it, which were used for transporting and disposing of dead bodies. People who are brave enough can take tours through the tunnels that once saw many faces passing through. Number 9. Sedlec Ossuary in the Czech Republic. If you're a fan of the thousands of skeletons displayed within the Paris catacombs, then Sedlec Ossuary in the Czech Republic is the place for you. It is a small Roman Catholic chapel that lies beneath the cemetery Church of All Saints. The chapel contains the remains of around 40,000 people, the bodies having been displayed artistically to form the supports and decorations of the area. Most of the bodies come from the plague and from the Hussite Wars, and it became a very desirable burial ground when soil from the place that Jesus had been crucified was scattered across the land by a man named Henry in 1278. One of the main standouts of this location is the massive chandelier that is made entirely of human remains, hanging right in the center of the room. Due to its creepy and macabre nature, it has been featured in horror movies like Blood and Chocolate. Number 8. Snake Island in Brazil. This next place is not about ghost stories or human remains, but is instead scary for those of us who aren't big fans of snakes. Judging by its name, you can probably guess that Snake Island is home to plenty of these slithery critters. The island can be found just off the coast of Sao Paulo and is 110 acres. Despite its relatively small size, it's home to more than 4,000 snakes, one of these including a species of viper with a venom that is capable of melting human flesh called the golden lacehead viper. So even if you do like snakes, you will still probably want to avoid this place. Reports say that you can find a snake every square meter on the island. There apparently did used to be people living on the island from 1909 to the 1920s, them being a lighthouse keeper and their family, but the rumor goes that the inhabitants died when snakes overtook the house, coming in through the windows. Number 7. Freeman Ranch in Texas. This one is again not any sort of ghost story, but is still incredibly creepy to look at and think about. Freeman Ranch in Texas is a 3,500 acre plot of land between San Marcos and Waverly in central Texas. It is a working ranch, but not one for just animals, instead also devoted to various different fields of research, including forensic anthropology. If you don't know what that means, it means that they leave human remains on the land to decompose, so that they can then come back later and study the process. It was founded back in 1941 by Harold Freeman and his brother Joe, and the land where the remains are kept is known as the Body Farm. Freaky. To make this a little more lighthearted though, it's professionally known as the Forensic Anthropology Research Facility, or FARF. I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty damn funny acronym. FARF. Number 6. Chowchilla Cemetery in Peru. Once again, if you're a fan of bones, then it may be worthwhile for you to make a trip over to Chowchilla Cemetery in Peru. This cemetery contains very well-preserved remains of pre-Spanish conquest bodies. It was utilized for apparently around 600 to 700 years before being closed in the 9th century and being rediscovered in 1920. The bodies were buried in pits and placed in sitting positions, the dry climates allowing them to maintain their clothing and even their hair, becoming naturally made mummies. Due to the maintenance of the bodies and surrounding artifacts, it became an incredibly popular spot for grave robbers, the cemetery being under attack for years. But in 1997, it finally came under the protection of the Peruvian government and is now a popular tourist spot. Some people who have visited the area say that it often feels like the skeletons are staring right at you, as if they're trying to tell you something. Number 5. Island of the Dolls in Mexico. I know, I've mentioned this one before on a similar list, but I just have to bring it up again because of how downright creepy it is. In the mid-20th century, a man named Don Julian left his wife in order to live on an island alone. Shortly after moving in, however, he found a body floating in the river along with what appeared to be their doll. In order to appease their spirit, he hung the doll from a tree on the island. And then he never stopped, continuing to find dolls from nearby areas and even the trash and hanging them around the island for years until his own passing in 2001. The island is now absolutely covered in these dolls, all in various states of disrepair and appearing quite creepy. It is a popular spot for ghost hunters as many people believe that the dolls on the island are haunted, their eyes apparently moving to look at you and hands raising up to reach out to you. Number 4. Museum Vrolijk in the Netherlands. Similar to Freeman Ranch in Texas, Museum Vrolijk in the Netherlands is not littered with ghost stories or tragic history, but is instead just what its name suggests, a museum. But it's not your typical museum, and you certainly wouldn't want to take a group of kids there on an afternoon school field trip. Located inside the University of Amsterdam and created by a Dutch pathologist and anatomist, the museum is home to many creepy and out-of-the-ordinary things. It has various body parts from both humans and animals, usually exhibiting different aspects of embryology, pathology, and anatomy. These being the studies of fetus development, disease and injury, and body structures, respectively. It also has many different remains and casts that showcase different malformations and medical anomalies. So I guess this might be a good destination if you're into that sort of thing, but I know that I am not. Number 3. Leap Castle in Ireland. If you're a fan of more historic locations, then you may be interested in learning about Leap Castle in Ireland, considered to be one of the most haunted castles in the world. Most people attribute this to the fratricide that was committed there in the 13th century. Fratricide meaning the killing of siblings. It also apparently contains the spirits of the many prisoners that were once held and even executed there. The chapel that is on the castle grounds is apparently where the fratricide took place, one of the sons of the family killing his priest brother in order to gain power. People now say that in this chapel you can see light coming through the windows even in the middle of the night, you can smell burning rubber, and the ghost of the priest is said to often appear. This castle has a long and creepily interesting history, so if you're interested in learning more about it, I recommend looking it up for yourself to get some more detail. Number 2. Lake Natron in Tanzania. Now let's move away from man-made horrors and take a look at some more natural ones. Lake Natron is located in northern Tanzania and is of course a lake. What's different about it though is its incredibly high salt content and temperatures of up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius. Only a few animals have adapted to live on this deadly shore, only one species of fish and groups of flamingos that feed on the algae. Any other animals who get too close though will be burned and die. What is most interesting about it though is that when they die, the body they leave behind appears like a stone statue. So when the water recedes, the bodies wash up on shore, leaving behind a horrifying tableau. Photographer Nick Brandt discovered this and took photos of the birds and other animals as though they were alive, and they are incredibly creepy to look at. Number 1. Bran Castle in Romania. Another scary castle, let's head over to Romania to Bran Castle, another place boasting being one of the scariest castles in the world. You most likely know this place for its other name of Dracula's Castle. That's because it was allegedly home to Vlad III, who is more commonly known as Vlad Dracula or Vlad the Impaler. Known for brutally impaling his enemies, he became the inspiration of Bram Stoker's horror novel Dracula. If you actually do choose to visit the castle, however, you will probably learn more about Romanian Queen Marie than you will about the historical Dracula. One of the creepiest elements of this castle is that in one of the chapels is a gold casket, and inside of that casket is Queen Marie's heart. In the area surrounding the castle, it's said that there are many undead spirits that would haunt the villagers at night, and there are many reports of ghosts from within the castle itself.
In our number 10 spot, we have Dulce, New Mexico. In the US, there's a town by the name of Dulce, and it is in New Mexico, close to the Colorado border. This isn't just any town in the US though. This is a town that is believed to be the home base to what is known as Dulce Base, a giant underground facility where weird experiments are done, and it is believed that advanced biological technologies were developed. Allegedly, a former government explosive engineer took part in building a secret underground base in Dulce, New Mexico in 1979. His name was Philip Schneider. According to Philip, this base is where he once came face to face with a gray, slimy alien. And there was also an underground battle where 60 people lost their life. Of course, this does feel something like out of a movie, but wouldn't that be the best, perfect place to hide the truth? Let's throw the truth in movies so people think, well, that can't be possible because that's just something out of a movie. As all whistleblowers tend to do though, Philip was yet another person who supposedly took his own life. Very suspicious. In our number 9 spot, we have Mount Weather, Virginia. Apparently there is a secret city or military base located in a mountain in Virginia. Mount Weather is located just 74 kilometers from Washington, D.C. This is a place that is sort of an emergency operations center in case there's a war or an apocalypse, for example. Apparently though, it is used to house all the highest levels of government officials if there were to ever be an emergency and they needed to be in a safe place. It also protects some national treasures, just like the movie National Treasure. It was built in the Cold War era, and it's a fully functional city equipped with hospitals, cafeterias, a train station, to name a few. Well, if an apocalypse does happen, at least we can rest easy knowing our government officials have used our tax dollars to keep themselves safe. Am I right or am I right or am I right? In our number 8 spot, we have Fort Knox. Believed to be one of the most secure places in the world, Fort Knox is apparently a military base that is located in Kentucky. Honestly though, I really don't think it is the most secure place. I bet you Area 51 is more secure, but whatever. Area 51 doesn't even show up on Google World, so that's top security for you. Anyways, people believe this place to be another holding area for treasures, but this one is allegedly the place where the Holy Grail is said to be. Huh, that's a crazy rumor that I wish could be proven true. Apparently also 2% of the world's metals are stored there, but alas, I bet we, the little people, may never know as walls are made of concrete, so ain't no burglar ever getting in and making it out alive anytime soon. In our number 7 spot, we have the American NSA spy hubs. For any non-Americans watching, I bet you that your own country also has a spy hub and is doing the same thing, but yeah, this one is about the American spy hubs. So don't just think it's an American thing. Apparently in the US there are windowless skyscrapers, and those are believed to be the NSA hubs. You think they're watching your every move and keeping a tab on you? Yeah, they probably are. Especially if you're someone that might have the ability to be heard by many. If you don't, then meh, I wouldn't worry about it. You're not a threat. Apparently these buildings are restricted and heavily secretive and are built to withstand terrorist attacks, which is super interesting to think about because what does that even mean? Are they made of some kind of metal that can't explode? Like, huh? I don't know. Apparently these states have confirmed NSA hubs: Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York City. In our number 6 spot, we have Diego Garcia. Okay, so this one is fascinating to me. Diego Garcia is a British island that apparently is owned by the US, and it is where they allegedly keep a secret underwater base. Apparently it is one of the most strategically located places for the US military. Allegedly it is a place where there is a top secret CIA prison where terrorist suspects are interrogated. In 2007, the Pentagon, aka the government, granted a $32 million contract to add a submarine base to the dock. So really that's all you need to know. what they are keeping in that submarine, probably the creatures of Atlantis and secretive documents, of course. Apparently so many of the original settlers' ancestors from the island were kicked off long ago and have tried to sue to get their land back, but they of course been unsuccessful. Which honestly, one of the world's most powerful governments has taken over, so no wonder it's a lost cause. In our number 5 spot we have the Marshall Islands. The Marshall Islands are another island that is owned by the US. It became quite occupied by the US in World War II. The Marshall Islands eventually became a sort of testing grounds for nuclear testing between 1946 to 1962. Apparently during this time the US conducted 67 nuclear tests. The repercussions of such testing were of course quite high. The remaining radiation on the island has been the reason that most of the original settlers have never returned, even though they are allowed to at this point in time. Oh yeah, now that we've destroyed your island, here you go, you can have it back. Apparently there are high levels of radiation in all of the crops, as you can probably imagine, after 67 nuclear tests, and so that is not suitable for anyone to make a home there and live comfortably. Apparently Bob Hope, the comedian, was once quoted talking about the island, and he said, "We located the one spot on Earth that hadn't been touched by the war and blew it to hell." Yep, that sounds like humans to me. In our number 4 spot we have the Menwith Hill Royal Air Force Station in the UK. This is a Royal Air Force base located in the United Kingdom, but don't let that confuse you. It's actually leased to the US. So this is really a US military base, aka a US spy hub. It was formed around 1954 when the British War Office purchased 550 acres of land and leased it to the US military. Apparently everything that is done there is of course top secret, naturally, and it was originally set up to help with the Cold War. People believe that they are spying on communications being done in Europe and Asia. Whatever goes on there though remains extremely restricted, despite the large amount of protests that the locals have done over the years. What's interesting about this space is that it looks like a bunch of enlarged golf balls, which makes it a sight that you cannot miss. In our number 3 spot we have North Brother Island. This is an island off the coast of New York that was originally purchased with the intention of turning it into a hospital. It became Riverside Hospital, and it became a place for people who had very contagious diseases, such as tuberculosis, yellow fever, smallpox, to name a few. It eventually became a quarantine place for military veterans until it became a rehab for heroin addicts. Yeah, after the doctors stopped prescribing it, the least they could do was offer a rehab center. Today the island is actually forbidden to visit. Apparently it was the inspiration behind Leo DiCaprio's movie Shutter Island, and there is a lot of speculation around the mysteriousness of the island. Is this another secret base that we don't know about? Who knows? In our number 2 spot we have Robbins Island. Robbins Island is another island located off the coast of New York, and it is also forbidden to the public. It is a very restricted area that was once the place for many business owners and powerful leaders to go to for many years. Tales of successful and failed business ventures circle the island, as well as pictures of presidents Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, whom were once there. Now the island is owned by Mr. Louis Bacon, who keeps it as a nature reserve and sanctuary, so it is still not open to the public. I bet you there are still powerful business meetings still done on the island. We just don't have any up-to-date photo proof yet. There's probably some kind of Illuminati cult base there, I bet. In our number 1 spot we have the closed city of Mercury, Nevada, USA. Some people don't know this, but there have been a lot of cities that have been restricted to the public over the last couple hundred years. One of them that is still very restricted to the public is Mercury, Nevada in the US. This is a city that was thriving in the 50s with a population of 10,000, having all the normal amenities, schools, hospitals, restaurants, etc. But eventually, it became the home to a bunch of scientists, and then eventually became restricted to approximately 500 people who are mainly researchers. It is still very heavily restricted, and you need government clearance in order to enter. Maybe that's because it is so close to Area 51, And it is within the phenomena of the Nevada Triangle where strange occurrences happen. People vanish without a trace, or disappear and reappear in a spot they weren't before. Sightings of aliens have also been reported, so perhaps maybe it's best that you can't go to Mercury. Who knows, maybe some of the aliens live there and that wouldn't be pleasant to see. But whatever is going on there, it is highly secretive, and I doubt will ever be filled in, at least not anytime soon.
In our number 10 spot today, we have Pluto's Gate. This is a site that is located in what was once the ancient city of Hierapolis, which resides in what is now Turkey. This site was once dedicated to the Roman god of death, Pluto, and an ancient historian named Strabo, who once went to this location, said that, quote, "Any animal that passes inside meets instant death. I threw in sparrows and they immediately breathed their last and fell." So, yeah. Maybe it's not really an inviting place exactly. Turns out there's more to this than just myth, however. Scientists measured the CO2 concentration at this site and discovered that during the day, this place might be fine, but during the night, the CO2 becomes heavier than air and pools at the bottom, which forms this sort of deadly lake. The reason it's fine during the daytime is because the sun is able to dissipate the gas. It is said that at dawn, the CO2 concentration that was measured 40 centimeters above the floor was at 35%, which would be enough to take a life within minutes. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Back in 1986, there was the tragic event of the accidental nuclear meltdown at the Chernobyl nuclear plant. The aftermath of this disaster took many lives, and it also rendered the area unsafe for years to come. While some of the areas surrounding the disaster are relatively safe now, there is still an area called the Chernobyl exclusion zone, which is strictly forbidden because of the radioactive contamination. You would think that the threat of a horrible death, or at least some painful side effects, might be enough to keep people out, but that is not the case. Throughout the years, people have continually tried to sneak into this zone to catch a glimpse at what exactly it holds. In our number 8 spot today, we have Zone Rouge. This area, also referred to as the Red Zone, is an area of France that is one of the most restricted on Earth. Located in northeastern France, it is said that this chain of uninhabited areas was completely destroyed after the events of the First World War. This area contains a mass amount of both human and animal remains, along with way too many unexploded weapons that have gone on to contaminate the surrounding water and land. This has led to the French government prohibiting any kind of activity in the areas that includes any sort of agricultural or settlement. I mean, I wouldn't particularly want to risk it with an undetonated explosive, so it completely makes sense why this area would be restricted. In our number 7 spot today, we have Snake Island. This island is located in Brazil and is one of the most dangerous in the entire world, and that is because it is absolutely filled to the brim with snakes. It is thought that Snake Island came to be when the snakes got trapped as a result of the rising sea levels, which disconnected this island from the mainland. The reason people aren't allowed to visit is obviously to protect the humans who want to go, but also to protect the snakes that live here, as some of them aren't seen anywhere else in the world, likely because of the lack of human interference. There's a critically endangered species of snake called a golden lancehead, and on this island there are about 4,000 of them, which is critical to the species being able to continue on. As of now, only a few select researchers and the Brazilian Navy are permitted to go to the island. In our number 6 spot today, we have Area 51. This is probably one of the most famous of all of the prohibited places, and that is likely because of just how many stories and conspiracy theories are surrounding it. Area 51 is a US military installation that the government insisted didn't exist until 2013. The area is said to mainly be used as a testing site by the CIA and the US Air Force because of its remote location 100 miles north of Las Vegas, but people don't buy it. People seriously believe that this site could be holding things like crashed UFOs, actual aliens, mermaids, you know, conspiracy theory stuff. At the end of the day, whether it's aliens or testing technology, the stuff that they are doing there is super secret, and there's a reason it's so protected. That hasn't stopped many people from trying to go there over the years, however. I mean, remember a couple years back when people wanted to storm it? Yeah. Good luck. In our number 5 spot today, we have Mount Omine. This mountain is the home of the Yamabushi monks, and it is famous for its 3 tests of courage. So, not everyone is banned from this place, but women sure are. The ban on women was placed in order to help remove thoughts of temptations from the monks as they practiced their strict lifestyle. Here's the thing with this rule though. There have been many females who have still gone here. They refer to the ban as a more voluntary situation. Both the temple and the local community call it a request rather than a rule or a law, and the request is in order to respect their tradition, as well as, of course, like I mentioned before, to help them. In our number 4 spot today we have Morgan Island. This is a place that is also referred to as Monkey Island, and this is due to the colony of about 4,000 rhesus monkeys who call this place home. The thing is though, the monkeys aren't originally from this South Carolina island, they were actually relocated here from Puerto Rico. Basically, these monkeys were living in a sort of research center before moving to this island, but it was becoming overpopulated and some of the monkeys who carried infectious diseases were escaping, which posed quite a health and safety risk. This is when South Carolina stepped in and offered this uninhabited island as a place for these monkeys to go and continue to be researched. There are now laws that prohibit anyone from the island for both yours as well as the monkeys' safety. In our number 3 spot today we have Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove is a privately owned campsite in Monterey in California, and it's the home to the wealthy and exclusive Bohemian Club. This club is only for some exclusive groups of men, despite the few dire attempts at including women. Every year there is a 2-week-long retreat that the club hosts on the private grounds, and while there have been 4 women who have been invited to the club as honorary members, the women are never invited to the Grove. Because of this weird ban and just the entire super strange nature of this whole ordeal, both the club and the Grove are part of many conspiracy theories. There has been no shortage of outsiders trying to sneak into the Grove to see what the heck is going on there and to see if they can get to the bottom of what this secretive club is really hiding. To be honest, there's definitely something sketchy going on with this whole thing, because it really just does give off like the weirdest vibes. They also have this weird club motto that says, quote, "Weaving spiders come not here." I'm not sure what that means, but it definitely sounds weird. Just a bunch of guys hanging out and no one else is allowed. I don't know, it's weird. Bohemian Grove has entered the chat. They're mad at me. In our number 2 spot today we have Metro 2. During the time where Stalin was in power, it is said that he instructed that an underground secret transport system would be built, known as Metro 2. This mysterious underground system is said to connect different administrative institutions, and it's even rumored that it contains apartments and different technical rooms. It's sort of like a secret escape tunnel for high-level officials. Of course, it's completely blocked off to outsiders or the general public, and while the Moscow Metro administration denies that these tunnels even exist, there was an urban exploration group back in 1994 that claimed to have found the entrance. At this point in time, the existence of only one of the rumored 4 lines has been confirmed, and it is called D6. In our number 1 spot today we have the Fukushima exclusion zone. Back in 2011 there was the Fukushima nuclear disaster which struck Japan. Because of this horrible incident, residents located within 18 miles of the plant were urged to evacuate, similar to the Chernobyl nuclear disaster we talked about before. In fact, this meltdown and Chernobyl's are the only 2 events to receive a level 7 event classification on the International Nuclear Event Scale. Because of this extreme radiation contamination, no one is allowed to enter the premises. Of course, I can't see why anyone would want to, but there are people who want to take the risk. This includes a 27-year-old photographer who decided to illegally sneak into the Fukushima exclusion zone. He explained that it looked like a real-life version of Fallout. Starting off in our number 10 spot we have the Lascaux Cave. This cave is located in France, and it got itself the title of being a UNESCO World Heritage Site after its discovery in 1940 due to the incredible prehistoric paintings that can be seen on the walls. Of course, this became a popular tourist destination and people were jumping at the chance to see these works of art completed by the early humans. But as it turns out, breathing is not very good for the art. The carbon monoxide that visitors were expelling was beginning to cause damage to these cave paintings, and of course, once they're gone, there's nothing that we can do to get them back. This led to the site being closed to the public in 1963. Now the only people allowed in are researchers and preservationists who work to make sure that the art stays for as long as possible. In our number 9 spot today we have Lake Nyos. So this isn't a place that is necessarily illegal to visit, but it definitely is a place that you should only live or even really visit at your own risk. Lake Nyos is located in Cameroon, and it is different from any regular old lake because of the volcanic crater that it sits in. The magma floor releases carbon dioxide in both the water and the surrounding air, making it a less than ideal place to live and breathe. Usually the CO2 just dissipates into the air, mostly harmlessly, but in 1986 there was a limnic eruption that caused a catastrophe. A limnic eruption is very rare, but it's what happens when dissolved carbon dioxide suddenly erupts from lake waters, which then goes on to form a gas cloud. This resulting gas cloud is extremely dangerous and is capable of displacing the oxygen in the area, which of course is lethal to any living thing, which is exactly what happened in 1986. This limnic eruption caused a noxious cloud of more than 1 million tons of CO2. This ended up taking the lives of 1,700 people in the area, as well as 3,500 livestock, which made it the first known large-scale asphyxiation caused by a natural event. Despite the threat of another eruption, as well as the lake's weakening walls that could result in a massive flood, people have resettled the area around the lake. I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't risk it, which makes me wonder why these people chose to. I'm sure there's gotta be some reason though. In our number 8 spot today we have the Svalbard Seed Vault. Deep within a mountain that sits in between Norway and the North Pole sits this vault that is more than 320 feet inside. This vault holds a massive collection of seeds. Like, we're talking about 890,000 different preserved seed samples from nearly every country in the world. The vault that holds these seeds is made to withstand both man-made and natural disasters, and the seeds inside are meant to be kept safe, so in the case of some sort of huge disaster, the seeds kept safe inside would ensure the continuation of a wide variety of really diverse food options. The door to this vault is only opened a few times a year, and just a few people are allowed inside in order to deliver seeds to the shelves. In our number 7 spot today we have St. Kilda. St. Kilda is the most remote settlement of the British Isles, and it is so isolated that it is often cut off by storms for weeks and sometimes even months at one time. That is most likely the reason as to why the previous inhabitants had developed a culture, economy, and government that was completely separate and different to their English rulers. Unfortunately, between missionaries and officials coming to the island in an attempt to change their way of life that was working perfectly fine for them, their sources of income dwindling, births not being able to keep up with the death rate, and the emigration rate combined, as well as the inevitable disease-ridden tourists coming to their island for whatever reason, things for those who once lived on the island changed drastically, and it was decided that they would evacuate this island in 1930. Since then, people have tried to resettle the island, but none have permanently remained, likely because of the isolation. In our number 6 spot today we have Surtsey Island. This island was born in 1963, and by that I mean it emerged from the sea in that year just off of the coast of Iceland after 4 years of being formed by an undersea volcano. A brand new island. What could we possibly do with that? While I'm sure humans could find 1,000,001 ways to ruin it, surprisingly we decided not to do that at all. Instead, this island was protected in order to allow scientists to study how new ecosystems form and what happens when there's really no human involvement in that. This means that those who are permitted to go to the island have some very strict rules to adhere to, and it's not like just anyone is allowed to go. I mean, I couldn't go, you probably couldn't go. Well, I don't want to make that assumption, I don't know. Maybe you're a scientist. One of these rules is that there are no seeds allowed on the island, and no using the facilities either. The last rule is because one day when scientists found a tomato growing on the island, they were confused as to how. Turns out somebody had gone number 2 not too long before, and thus a new poop tomato was grown from the ground. Kinda gross, kinda cool, not gonna lie. In our number 5 spot today we have Centralia. Located in Pennsylvania, this town is often referred to as one of the gateways to hell. That is due to the fire that spread in an underground coal mine underneath the town in 1962. Despite the years it's been, the fire still blazes underground, which causes the smoke and poisonous gases to rise up from the ground, not only causing an eerie appearance, but also a very serious health hazard. The temperatures can be so hot in areas that one guy's backyard was measured at 626 degrees Fahrenheit. Sometimes the fire will also burn through supports underground, which in the end turns into a sinkhole. This has caused pets, wildlife, and residents to unsuspectingly get swallowed up into the hole. In 1984, the US government ordered a total evacuation of the town, but a handful of residents refused to leave and even went to court over the right to stay in the town for as long as they live. In our number 4 spot today we have Pine Gap. This location is in Australia, and it is a heavily guarded and top secret facility. It is said that Pine Gap is actually a joint defense facility between the Australian and the United States governments. It is said that it is operated by both the CIA and NSA, that it is strictly off limits to anyone not involved or given high security security clearance. Apparently, at first, this place was said to be a space research center, but now it has become abundantly clear that it is actually used to support the United States in both intelligence as well as military activities. If someone decided to trespass into this top secret area, it would undoubtedly put them in a whole world of trouble, kind of like an Area 51 deal. In our number 3 spot today, we have La Oroya. Located in Peru, this town has a population of 30,000 people, despite the metal smelter contamination that has been seen since 1922. The smelter closed in 2009 after the company that ran it declared bankruptcy, but here's how that happened in the first place. The American-owned company ran out of money because they had to fund the environmental cleanup and the anti-pollution measures. Seems like maybe they should have chosen a different path. Seems like it didn't pay off to pollute someone else's air. I don't know. I guess they forgot that there's consequences for actions. It still remains as one of the most polluted areas in the entire world, and the toxic metals have gone on to infect the water, the soil, and the air. While it is completely unsafe to live there, people still do, and sadly they suffer the extreme adverse effects of it. In our number 2 spot today, we have Mezgor. This is a location in Russia that finds its home in the Ural Mountains. This little town is top secret and is completely forbidden to any kind of visitor. This is said to be because the town is apparently home to Russia's nuclear missiles, and the rules are so strict that people aren't even allowed near the town or its vicinity. There are also rumors that suggest that this town contains Mount Yamantau, and that inside this mountain there is the Russian government's extensive bunker, making this just another reason why this town is completely cut off to anyone who isn't a very high-ranking official. In our number 1 spot today, we have Wittenoom. This place in Australia is the home to a former blue asbestos mine, which is exactly what makes it one of the most contaminated places in the country. I mean this literally. The roads were paved with asbestos, even after the mine shut down in 1966. While this city was once the home to 20,000 residents, the population dropped significantly after the deaths of 300 former mine workers from mesothelioma. Apparently it was decided that it would be too expensive to clean up the town, so instead the government just declared it unfit to inhabit and took it off the maps. While most people have since left the town, it is said that 3 residents refused to leave and still remain in the almost completely abandoned town.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Tower of London. I have been here myself. I did a little tour, took some photos, and I had no idea how dark the history really was here. Kings were beheaded, queens were horribly beheaded. Witnessing an apparition is pretty common in the Tower of London, of course, with its grim history. A common sighting is Thomas Becket, a martyred saint, and of course the Anne Boleyn. If you visit the Tower of London, you might catch a glimpse of the second wife of King Henry VIII. Anne Boleyn was found guilty of treason. She had been charged with having sexual relationships with 5 others, including Lord Rochford, aka her brother George Boleyn. Yeah, a lot of tea in that one. Some Game of Thrones stuff, apparently. She had also apparently had relations with Sir Henry Norris, the king's groom of the stool, and on top of all this, Anne was also found guilty of conspiring to kill her husband. Now, it has since been proven that all of these crimes were a bunch of rubbish. Anne wasn't even around when all these things even took place. She was still recovering from the birth of her daughter, future Elizabeth I, in October 1533. So there's no way she's fooling around with the groom of the stool, you know what I mean? She was busy at the time. All parties involved were still executed on Tower Hill in May 1563, and then 2 days later, Anne Boleyn was executed for her crimes. A lot of dark history. Number 9, Transylvania. Heading over to Romania. I often forget that Transylvania is a real place with real history, and not just an animated Adam Sandler family film. One of the most famous castles in Transylvania is Bran Castle. This is the castle most commonly associated with Dracula, with Bram Stoker's Dracula. And of course it belonged to the very real Queen Marie. The castle has seen many horrors back in the Middle Ages, and locals believing in undead souls that haunt villagers at night, yeah, that surely doesn't help you sleep. You may have heard of Vlad the Impaler, aka Vlad Dracula. Well, this guy was a brutal ruler. His methods of punishment back in the mid-1400s were awful. As his name hints towards, they were specific. Transylvania is also home to the haunted Hoai-Bakui Forest, a paranormal hotspot. Many claim a UFO also touched down in the middle of the 20th century over this forest too. So we got vampires, the undead, and UFOs, all in Transylvania. What a trip. Nice, let's do it. Let's go visit. Sounds fun. Number 8. The Terracotta Army. The tomb of Emperor Qi Shi Huang, China's first emperor. In this tomb, we can find 6,000 statues, but they all have unique carvings on their face, as if to suggest they are all custom statues accurately representing a soldier. All 6,000. That's amazing. That's impressive. Back in 1974, farmers were digging up a well. This was 20 miles east of Xi'an, and they stumbled upon a pit that uncovered all of this history. They found this entire burial chamber. We believe there were around 700,000 workers. They were putting together this masterpiece for 3 decades. Archaeologists have discovered 8,000 statues in total, with horses and chariots, the whole shebang, and of course the emperor's tomb. A grim detail here is that in the emperor's tomb, streams of mercury were put around the floor of his burial chamber. And in 2005, over 4,000 samples all tested positive for mercury. So to this day, less than 1% of his tomb has actually been excavated. It's simply too dangerous. The emperor also believed that after he had passed, he would have to face the spirits of his enemies again. So he wanted to be prepared even after death, hence the army. The emperor decided to close the tomb though before the workers even had a chance to get out. He was worried his enemies had already found out, so he just trapped them in there. It's horrible. So yeah, there's a lot of statues and dark histories in this one. Number 7, Turkey Gladiator Arena. Yes, another arena, another staple in history, filled with gruesome combat, all in the name of entertainment. An 1,800-year-old arena was discovered back in 2020, while we were all, stuck inside doing nothing. Meanwhile, a 90-meter wide amphitheater was found in the ancient city of Mastura. Its purpose was thought to be the same as the Roman Colosseum, to host these massive professional gladiator events with wild animals, and it turns out that's exactly the case. Yeah, humans are the same everywhere. This was around 200 AD, when the Severan dynasty was ruling the Roman Empire. If betting on animal fights was your thing, you'd have to travel all the way to this place to do so. Yeah, hope you have trail shoes and good knees. I wouldn't make it. No way. I'd be like, yeah, place some bets for me. I am not going anywhere. Have you seen that hill? No way. Number 6, Highgate Cemetery. Heading over to England yet again. London's Highgate Cemetery is beautiful, but back in the early 1800s, it was booming. The city's population was growing, meaning that more people were dying, of course. So now we needed more land for bodies. Graves were being placed in between houses and shops. Not really ideal when it comes to a loved one being buried. So Parliament decided to step in and help out. They built 7 cemeteries, and the third was built in 1839, and that was Highgate Cemetery. Come 1854, the cemetery was full. It was beautiful. Everybody wanted to be buried there. What an odd desire that is. But look at it. How inviting is that? It was so popular that they added another 20 acres. More bodies? No problem, let's do it. But by the time World War II came along, the cemetery was completely abandoned, and in 1960 the cemetery was officially closed. Buildings began to fall onto themselves, the landscaping is now just a mess. It certainly looks the part now, it looks like a haunted cemetery. And today many stories are passed around of these men in dark robes, said to practice dark rituals in Highgate. Now it's not uncommon to see apparitions in a cemetery, but red-eyed demons? Highgate's another level, my friends. Number 5, the Crooked Forest. Forests are already creepy. This one looks straight out of a Tim Burton film. Let's talk about it. The Crooked Forest, Poland. There's around 400 odd-shaped pine trees near the town Gryfino. These trees are about 90 years old, and all these trees from the base, they immediately go towards the north and they slowly curve back towards the sky. Almost like an upside down question mark. Despite the odd bend, these trees are otherwise healthy. There's been many theories, but none of them really stick as to why these trees look that way. Some suggest that it was a gravitational anomaly, but that's a little too far-fetched. This isn't, interstellar. Other theories claim there were heavy snowfalls that weighed down the branches, and then they just, slowly corrected themselves, but why is it just a select amount? I live in Canada, we have lots of snow. I've never seen any Sleepy Hollow trees in my entire life. My favorite theory is that farmers were trying to make the tree curved on purpose to make stronger wheels. The grain direction would have made for natural curved wheels, which means stronger. Again, seems a little too far-fetched. I don't know. I don't think growing a 90-year-old tree is the best way to make a wheel. But again, nobody knows. What are your thoughts? Comment down below. Number 4, Valley of the Kings. We can't not include ancient Egyptian curses on this list. Terrifying places more mysterious than the Bermuda? Yeah, how about a pharaoh curse? Let's do it. Pharaohs of Egypt. It was said any thieves who enter or disturb the dead in Egypt shall be cursed and set to perish. How fun is that? Well, this applies to archaeologists too. Howard Carter and his team back in the 1920s had come across the discovery of a lifetime. They found the tomb of King Tut, launching the study of Egyptology. And we're still finding tombs in Egypt to this day. Even last year we found like 216 tombs. It was crazy. That place is a literal treasure chest. The thing is, after the discovery, some researchers on Carter's team started to feel under the weather. Maybe there was a bug going around, maybe it was too hot, or maybe it was the curse of the pharaoh. Yeah, some men on his team perished from blood diseases or undisclosed circumstances. They're just like, yeah, we're not gonna tell you. Many of these ancient tombs have warnings. I think it's time we start listening to those. Number 3, Newgrange Tomb. Okay, time to get a little weird. Over in Ireland, there's a tomb built by Egyptians. It's called Newgrange, and it's as old as the pyramids, so the belief is that Egyptians also built this one. Checks out, makes sense. It was first discovered back in the late 1700s, and it's been closed ever since. It's a mystery who or what is inside, but the folklore surrounding the tomb is too good not to talk about. See, locals believe that this tomb is a gateway to another realm, and that it was built by goblins. Yeah, and if and when this tomb is open, it's believed goblins will just all of a sudden come rushing out, like Harry Potter style. Evil goblins, that is, might I add. Wouldn't it be cool if goblins actually ran out? We're like, oh, really, this whole time? That explains the pyramids. That explains so much. Number 2, Bangor Fort. Back in the 16th century, King Maddo built the massive Bangor Fort in India. The population of this small town was around 1,000 at the time. It was a beautiful fort. Many considered this a luxury, of course, rightfully so. This thing looks like a set piece from Game of Thrones. It's beautiful. The legend has it that Princess Ratnavati, who at the time was living in the luxurious fort, she was the talk of the town. All these dudes were proposing left, right, and center, all trying to get her attention. Princes from all over would come in and try and take her hand. Then one day when visiting town, a magician named Skindia saw the princess shopping for perfumes, so he planned on using the black magic of Vishakaran on the princess. So he mixed it with the perfume that she was looking at, but it didn't work out. His plan failed. The princess caught on and she smashed the perfume at his feet and then left. And as the bottle broke apart, the magician then cursed the entire fort and those living inside of it. Yep, started okay, got even worse. Only days later, a war erupted around the fort and there were many casualties. To this day, Bangor Fort is said to be extremely haunted. And finally, number 1, Huska Castle. Yes, the demon castle. Let's do it. According to folklore, the Huska Castle, which is located just north of Prague in Czech Republic, is built over a bottomless pit that leads directly into hell. Yeah, the legend claims the 13th century King Ottokar II offered a pardon to any prisoner who agreed to be lowered into the pit in order to report what was down there. The first prisoner who was lowered into the pit only lasted 30 seconds before he started screaming in fear. Sounds pretty horrible. Whatever he saw was no good. Maybe it was a cave spider. That ought to do it for me. Legend goes that when he was brought back up, his hair turned white and he apparently saw these half-human, half-demon creatures that were flying through the darkness with scaly wings. Nice. That's literally the pits of hell. The castle was built over a hole without things like a water source or any kitchens, anything like that, and it's said they did this because it wasn't actually meant to be used by humans, but rather it was meant to capture the demons should they ever rise from this mysterious hole. Nice. Even demons have a place to crash. How lovely is that? We can all sleep knowing that the demons are okay. They're all comfortable. We're good.